Well, welcome, guys. My name is Tristan Herrmann. I work in product development here in the research department of precision planting. I'm joined by Aaron Herrmann, and he is one of our agronomists in the research department as well. And we are going to be talking to you today about modernizing sprayer technology. But before we get started, I want to pull up this picture. It is probably the most famous picture in all of American history, George Washington crossing the Delaware. Now, when the Revolutionary War started, no offense to our present company, but all Washington had at his disposal was farmers. And he was completely outmatched. His enemy, the Hessians, were camped out across the river in Trenton, New Jersey, and Washington was in Pennsylvania. And he was outmatched, outgunned, his troops were tired, but he did something surprising. Under the cover of darkness, on Christmas night in 1776, Washington crossed the Delaware River. He marched to Trenton, and he completely wiped out his enemies, completely destroyed them. It was a surprise move that turned the war on its head. And it's not an overstatement to say that if Washington had not crossed the Delaware that night, we would have been coming here under a British flag, not an American one. So what did Washington know? What did Washington know that made him do this? He knew that offensive operations oftentimes is the surest, if not only, means of defense. You know, it's kind of a mouthful, but I like the way Jack Dempsey summarized it, the boxer. He said the best defense is a good offense. You know, sometimes to defend something, you have to go on the attack. You have to go on offense. So why are we talking about Washington and Jack Dempsey? How does that apply to the farm? So this right here, this is Herrmann Farms. This is where I grew up. It's me, it's my dad, and it's my brother. We've been farming together in the Toulon area, the Spoon River Valley, since as far back as I can remember. And I want to open up the books of our farm to you a little bit. I want to show you what our farm looks like on the asset side. So we're going to show you the asset sheet for our farm on June 1st of any particular year. Now June 1st is an interesting time to look at the asset sheet on the farm. But the reason for this is it offers a unique perspective on the operation. This is the time of year when our crop is already coming up out of the ground. It's also the time of the year when we've applied all the fertilizer we're going to have applied for that season. And it's the point where we have paid for every single additional input for that year. The rest of our chemical program has been paid for. So what does our asset sheet look like? You know, about 1/8 of our entire assets that are non-land are tied up in our buildings. Our machine sheds, our grain storage, this is about 1/8 of our assets. About 1/4 of our assets are tied up in machinery. You know, our combine, a couple of Magnum tractors, auger wagons, pickup trucks, things like that. But there's a category up here that dwarfs them all. It's more than any other asset combined. And it's the value, the potential value of the crop in the field. For us, that's corn and soybeans. And this crop is the asset we depend on for our farm continuing. It is the most valuable asset, bar none. And it is vulnerable. It is in the field, and it is vulnerable to disease. It is vulnerable to insects. It is vulnerable to weeds. And we need to protect, we need to defend this crop, our asset. So what do we have to defend it with? It's this last little sliver of the pie. It is the remaining chemical in our program. So on our farm, what we need to do is we need to take a page out of Jack Dempsey and George Washington's playbook. We need to defend this crop by going on offense. And the sprayer, your sprayer, our sprayer, is the tool that gets that job done. It's the offensive weapon in our tool belt. So we pay for a Cadillac chemical program. We put it on our sprayer, and we take the fight to the field. And this is what happens. This is a horrifying picture to see. And it's a scary image because I know, at least for me, this could easily happen to me. I'm no better than the individual that this happened to. So how do you feel when you see something like this? What kind of wells up in you? Where's your stress level go? So I want to show you something interesting about the sprayer operation. We have mapped a ton of data over the years at Precision Planting. We have mapped downforce, we've mapped singulation, we've mapped spacing, all kinds of information. But this is a new one. This is heart rate of a sprayer operator. You see, I was kind of interested this past year to see what does the stress level of a sprayer operator look like. And so what I did is I went out to one of our farmer partners who will remain nameless, and I put a smartwatch on them to see what's their heart rate look like as they go through the field. And some interesting things popped out. You can see here in red is the higher heart rate, and dark green is the lower heart rate. So I hopped into the field at this point and put the watch on, and you can immediately see we're operating here in a post-bean pass, post-emerge pass, and the stress level is high, the heart rate is high. We finish that field, we pull out onto the road, and immediately we calm down. The stress level dissipates. So we just drive a short ways down the road, pull into the next field, and what happens? Our heart rate goes back up. We're stressed again. And this is just showing what you guys already know, that the stress of operating a sprayer is real. It's not an enjoyable place to be in the sprayer cab. And I think this image right here is one of the reasons, it's just one of the reasons our stress levels are so high. So let's dive into this image a little bit more. What happened here? Why did this crop get burned when this grower started spraying this field? You know, I think the most likely candidate is the grower or the operator, whoever it was, did a poor job cleaning out the sprayer. He was probably switching between crops, and you know, a lot of our sprayers have these dead zones at the end of the boom sections. And they can get packed with chemical, and if we do a poor job cleaning it out, it will affect the next pass. You know, even if we are just not changing chemicals, but we sit overnight, you know, certain chemistries can get hot in the booms. When we start the pass the next morning, we can burn the crop as well. A lot of products require constant agitation to keep them in suspension. And so if the sprayer sits for a long time, you know, that product might fall out of suspension, and we now have a gradient of concentrations in our sprayer booms. Now, let's imagine instead of burning the crop, the operator instead just didn't prime the boom well enough, that they had clean water they were spraying out. The situation that that's going to look like is not one where the field is scorched. We're just going to have sprayed clean water, and we're going to have a ton of weed escapes through that standing crop. But if we think through these reasons, it boils down to one simple thing, and that is that the grower, the operator, lost confidence in the product that was in the spray booms. You know, we want either the exact mix that's in the product tank or the mix that's in the clean water tank to be in the spray boom at any one time, and the grower lost confidence that that was the case. So these are the reasons that a year ago we launched a product we call Reclaim. Reclaim is a boom recirculation system that works both on traditional nozzles with check valves and electronic pulsing nozzles. So I'm going to have Aaron Herrmann come up with me. Rather than just describe Reclaim, we're going to demo it here on our little 2-nozzle boom over here. So what we've done is we have created a small replication of a sprayer wet boom, and we've plumbed it all in clear so you can see what's going on. So you can see that this spray boom has these dead zones that we talked about at the end. And we've put ball valves at the end so we can switch between what a Reclaim system would look like versus a traditional sprayer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to act like I'm pulling into the field and priming my booms for the first time. I'm going to kick on the master spray, and I'm going to spray product out of my booms until I get product to the tips. And you can see my chemical is working my way to my nozzles, and it takes a while, and I'm wasting product all while this is happening. And we can see here the clean water is just hanging out in these dead zones. And while I'm priming the boom, I am wasting product and wasting time before I get started. So now, what would this look like with Reclaim? Well, let's turn the ball valves, and we'll see what that looks like. I'll kick on reclaim, and we're just going to cycle that product through the sprayer, and we will have the right mix, a perfect prime from the start. Now this gets really interesting when we talk about clean out. So we're going to turn the ball valves back off. We're back to a traditional sprayer, and I'm going to switch to pulling from the rinse tank. I'm going to kick on my master, and we're going to be spraying clean water through this sprayer. And you can see the clean water is working its way through the nozzles, through the sprayer boom. And the opposite is happening. We are getting product hanging out in these dead zones, and it just hangs there, and hangs there, and hangs there. Now, the mixture that we're using here, it's just water and food coloring. This should be the easiest thing in the world to clean out, but it's still there. Now, can you imagine if this was a sticky substance, something that really likes to pack in these end sections? This is what we're doing when we're trying to clean out through a traditional system. So, with reclaim, all I have to do, open up my end sections. I'm going to reclaim my clean water back to tank, cycle it through. You can see we get a much better clean out by removing these dead zones. So that kind of covers the aspects of pulling into the field to start spraying and pulling out and cleaning out. I'm going to hand things over to Aaron Herrmann, and he's going to cover some of the in-field agronomic aspects of spraying itself.
Thanks, Tristan. We are really excited about reclaim and how it can waste less chemical and ensure that we have right product in the booms and make clean out easier. But once we have the right product in the boom, how good a job are we doing when we hit the field? When we take that first pass across the field, how good a job are we doing? In precision planting, asked ourselves the exact same question several years ago. We wanted to know, with our greatest offensive weapon, how good a job are we actually doing by making the product we put through it do the job. And we quickly realized with these sprayers that it actually depends who you see in that sprayer cab. And so you can take the exact same sprayer pictured here, give a farmer the exact same tips, put two different guys in the cab, and get drastically different results. And this goes for all the sprayers out there that have a standard rate controller system that is controlling rate by using pressure. And so what type of sprayer operators do we have out there today? Well, we have who we call Careful Carl. Careful Carl, he's a meticulous type of guy, and he pays attention to detail. And so he takes the sprayer catalog because he's going to check the tips, and he's going to make sure he has the correct spray quality coming from his tips. And he knows as he changes speeds in the field, that's going to impact his spray quality. And so he wants to know that exact speed to run at. Once he actually gets in the field, he's going to take his time. He's not in a rush, and he's going to make that sprayer perform to the best of its capabilities. He's going to back into corners and not round extremely tight turns. And so who else do we have for sprayer operators? Who else could we put in the cab? Well, we like to call them Hammer Down Harry, also known as cowboys. Now this is Hammer Down Harry on the way to the field. He is not messing around. See, for Hammer Down Harry, it is all about acres per day and slamming Mountain Dews. He doesn't have time to check tips. He has time to get things done. And when he hits that field, all he's looking at is making sure he's putting on the right rate. But after that, it's all about acres per day. So we wanted to measure how good a job are these guys doing. And so we took our 4730 sprayer and we put these two characters in the cab. And we quickly realized that this sprayer actually doesn't give us enough information to know if we're doing a good job. See, the sprayer gives us a boom-wide flow from a flow meter, but that doesn't account for the speed of the boom going around turns and the rate difference around turns. And so we put our product called EM FlowSense that we typically use for planters and side dress bars onto every nozzle of the sprayer. That way we can know the rate on every single acre. And we quickly realize the struggle with 𝗬𝗲𝗿𝗆's ambition. Watch this 2020 map as he takes this corner. His outside boom section goes to a half rate while his inside boom section goes to a 3x rate. He's shooting for 15 gallon of the acre, and when he goes around the tip of this waterway, his outside boom section is going all the way down to 7, while his inside is at 25. Now, I don't know anybody here that would want to cut their chemical program in half and expect the same results. But yet we do this and we sacrifice this around turns. And we're not going to get the same results. So 𝗬𝗲𝗃𝗏, he knows this. He's like, silly 𝗬𝗲𝗿𝗆, you should not be rounding that tight of turns. And so he's going to back in to as many corners and edges as possible. And so he's going to square up the tip of the waterway. And he's going to try to prevent his booms from turning and sacrificing rate. But even 𝗬𝗲𝗃𝗏, as meticulous as he can be, he still is not immune to rate variability. Watch as he just takes a mild turn on this waterway. Again, shooting for 15 gallon to the acre, his outside boom section drops to 12 gallons. In a little more severe turn, his outside boom section is going to drop to 10 gallons to the acre. That's about a 35% reduction in chemical. Does this have an impact on weed control? Does this matter? We had the same question. And so we have rate trials out at Precision Planting every year. And this is us out in one of them, and we're flagging every single water hemp that we can see. And as we're flagging our full recommended rate and that same rate reduction we had on 𝗬𝗲𝗃𝗏's last turn. And so in this picture above the line, we have a full recommended rate with a flag by every water hemp. And below the line, we have that same reduction that 𝗬𝗲𝗃𝗏 had on his last turn. And notice the drastic difference because there is 70% more water hemp below the line. Now, this happened to be a residual plot. So the farmer has a post-pass to clean up these weeds. The problem is if this chemical reduction is on a turn, when he comes back with his post-pass, he's going to put on another 35% reduction of chemical. And so he's starting with more weeds, and now he's trying to control it with less chemical. And that is a bad combination. And I think this is the number one reason for weed escapes, is not getting on the correct rate. And if some of those weeds survive, they're going to breed. And next year, we're going to have a selection of the most tolerant water hemp. And year over year, we continue to hit it with a reduced rate, selecting for more and more tolerant water hemp. Now, is rate the only thing? If we can get rate right, are we good? Well, on this slide, I have a picture of all the same rates. These spray cards are all 10 gallon to the acre. But you can see there's a really big difference on how that 10 gallon to the acre actually hits the plant. And so let's talk about some of the droplet sizes that we have on these spray cards. First of all, if you look closely, we have a lot of small droplets. Very small droplets. And how do small droplets act? Well, small droplets are incredibly light in weight, and they come out of the nozzle fast and then they slow way down. And so if the sun hits just right, we can actually see them in the spray plume. As the air comes across that boom, it takes the small droplets into the plume. And after that happens, there's two things that are most likely. One is if there's a breeze, it can drift off target. And two, if it's hot and it's low humidity, they can evaporate, and they might never even hit our target. So you can see a lot of other size droplets, a lot of big droplets on these spray cards. What's the problem with big droplets? Well, as you can see, a big droplet here, we have a lot of volume in a big droplet. And we have even bigger droplets than this. Check out this one. This is like the spray card in the middle, where we have one big droplet, a few medium droplets, and then there's no other droplets. And that's because they're all consumed in the volume of that really big droplet. And so the bigger droplets we have, the less coverage that we have. And so take, for example, these two spray cards sprayed at the same rate at 12 gallon to the acre, very different in coverage. Now, how much coverage is enough? Well, if you take a spray card, how I evaluate coverage is I think about, can I fit that target weed anywhere on that spray card? And so to scale, if we take a 1/2 inch or a 1/4 inch water hemp and we zoom in on this spray card, you can see we can start placing weeds where they're going to get no chemical or very little chemical. But the advantage of big droplets like this is that they don't drift. They don't move like the small droplets do. So how do we get coverage through our tips, but at the same time reduce drift? Well, if we have to reduce drift and we have to reduce the small droplets, that means we have to go to a higher carrier volume to get the same coverage. And so this is going from a 12 to a 20 gallon, and now you can see we're pretty effective at hitting all of those weeds. What else is a disadvantage of really large droplets? Well, as they hit the weed surface, they have a lot of velocity and momentum, and they'll bust apart. As you can see in the video, the volume we intend to hit that weed, not all of it sticks. And so we have a lot of droplet rebound as we get bigger droplet sizes. So, what kind of droplet sizes are coming out of our tips today? Well, I borrowed this data from our friends Tom and Jason at Sprayers 101, showing the distribution of droplet sizes for an extended range tip. And so starting on the right of the graph, we have 1,000 micron droplets. Now, droplets are measured in diameter, edge to edge of the sphere. And this is a 1,000 micron droplet here. And so from 1,000 to about 600, we call these large droplets. This guy's a 500 droplet that you can see on the chart. We have a 300, a 200, and a 100. And this 100 we call driftable fines, up to 141 microns. And you can see for an extended range, we have very few big droplets, but we have quite a few small droplets. And remember, for the same amount of volume, we have a lot of droplets. So there is more 100 micron droplets than any droplet size coming out of this tip. Now you might be thinking, I've never seen an extended range droplet size spectrum. What information do I have? How do I know what tip to select? Well, the tip manufacturers, they use the volume median diameter, that droplet size, in which 50% of the volume's a bigger droplet size and 50% of the volume's a smaller droplet size. They use that in the distribution of this histogram to categorize spray quality. And this is what you see on your tip charts. And so this medium spray quality actually has a wide range of drops, all the way from very small to some very coarse 500 micron drops. Now let's say we don't want this amount of drift. There is a lot of driftable fines in an extended range tip. And so we move to a small drift reduction, such as a Wilger SR or a T-Jet drift guard. And as we do this, you quickly see that your spray quality changes to a coarse spray quality. Now look at the difference on how many 100 and 200 micron droplets we have. We've almost reduced them by 50%. And so that's a big change to move from a medium to a coarse spray quality. And that volume is shifted into slightly bigger droplets. But we still have some driftable fines. Can we reduce drift again? Absolutely. And so this is a moderate drift reduction. And we shift that volume median diameter again, and we get a spray quality of very coarse. Tips like this Wilger MR or an T-Jet AI XR would be very similar in spray quality. Now, we reduce drift again by 50% compared to our small reduction tip. But now we can see as we reduce volume over here, we start to add it back into our bigger droplets. And we start running the risk of lower coverage and of rebounding. And we could keep going. There's tips on the market that keep reducing drift. And really what that means, if you hear a guy that says this has fabulous drift reduction, really that means it has really large droplets. And it puts the volume in big droplets. So where do you start? Where do you start with selecting the right tip? And how do you know which spray quality that is right for your farm? Well, the best place to start is the chemical label. Take 2,4-D, for example, or a lot of the systemic herbicides. They call for a coarse, very coarse, or an extremely coarse, pretty much a coarse or coarser spray quality. And that's because they need decent coverage to hit the plant, but they're not a contact herbicide like a Liberty that needs a lot of coverage. It needs to cover every part of that leaf, or near every part. And Liberty's strict to a medium and coarse droplet size. It's less effective if we have really big droplets. What about our drift restricted herbicides, such as Enlist? They are very specific that it is approved nozzles and pressures only. So I have a list of nozzles, a list of pressures, and you choose. Now I was surprised. You look them up and they're actually really different as far as spray quality, from very coarse to ultra coarse. And there's a big difference on how big the droplet sizes are in those spray qualities. And then Delero's a fungicide, which we need really good coverage, and we're probably not as concerned about drift as some of these other chemicals. And so they're calling for a fine or a medium droplet size. So Not every chemical is specific to this is the exact spray quality. They give you a range. And really, that's for you and your agronomist to understand what's my carrier volume gonna be. How much drift am I willing to tolerate? Am I next to grandma's garden, or am I out in the middle of nowhere, where the fields next to me are my fields? But I believe there's information, and you have enough information at your disposal between the tip manufacturers, the chemical manufacturers, and your local agronomist to figure out what is the best spray quality for the products you're putting down. And so I challenge you to do that. Take the products in your shed and the tips you have and make sure you match the right spray quality to the product. So we give Hammer Down Harry a tip. We tell him, we want a coarse spray quality. We're gonna spray Liberty and Roundup together. And so we give him a tip that gives us a coarse spray quality, and he takes it to the field. And representative of the balls inside of here, you can see that he's gonna have some fines, and he's gonna have some medium-sized or moderately sized droplets, and some smaller droplets. But this is what we're shooting for. And as he goes to the field, watch the 20/20. On the right, we have pressure, and in the top right, we have speed. As he comes out of the headlands, he's at 8 mile an hour and 30 PSI. But he quickly speeds up to 14 mile an hour and 80 PSI. Well, what happens to his droplets when that happens? So look at the difference in driftable fines when he speeds up. He almost doubles his driftable fines just from going from 8 to 14. Now he's coming into another pass, and he's at a slower speed again in 30 PSI. What happens to that same tip droplet sizes? Well, you can see we have a lot less driftable fines, a lot less smaller droplets, but we start to get a lot more bigger droplets, and we even are gonna drop a 1,000 micron droplet every now and then. And so what's this look like actually as far as coverage on spray cards? So pictured here, I have that 30, 50, 80 PSI at their given speeds. Now the 80 PSI, it doesn't look that different unless you start studying it. You start studying it, you realize there's less blue on that card. And that is because we had all these smaller driftable droplets, and not all of them made it to that card. And that scares me. That scares me because where did they go? Now, the best case scenario is they evaporated. The worst case scenario is they're on grandma's garden. They're killing the landlord's grass. And so he chose a coarse droplet size for a specific purpose, and he wasn't fulfilling, he wasn't getting that. Now at 8 mile an hour and 30 PSI, he changed the spray quality to very coarse. And now he's dropping bigger droplets and has less coverage. If we zoom in there, you can see we can start to fit weeds on that spray card without getting hit. So how good did Hammer Down Harry and Careful Carl do when we sent them to the field? So we sent them to spray, and we wanted to know how good did they do at maintaining their selected spray quality. Well, Hammer Down Harry, he only spent 21% of the time at 11 mile an hour. Because if it was good running, he was gonna max out that tip. And so he spent 70% of the time going really fast and increasing his drift. But even Hammer Down Harry, as fast as he likes to go, he still spends 9% of the time at 8 mile an hour. And that's coming out of headlands. backing into corners. How about 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏? Well, 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, he knows that if he speeds up too much, it's going to impact his spray quality. And so he caps his speed at 11 mile an hour and stays there 75% of the time. And he's not going to spend any time going fast because he knows he's increasing drift. But he's a little easier on the hydrostat, and so he spends a little more time at the 8 mile an hour. Sacrificing coverage. So we've been beating up on 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗿𝗆. He's really been doing a worse job than 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 as far as rate around turns and as far as spray quality as he changes his speed drastically. But there's one thing 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗿𝗆 has going for him, and that is he's faster. We time these two side by side, and 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗿𝗆, including time for fill-ups, was 20% faster. Now that's a big deal. That means less time in the sprayer cap, more time for family, more time for doing book work. I know a lot of farmers, and very few of them just love spending tons and tons of time in the sprayer cap. Yet 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗿𝗆 is spending over 100 plus acres less per day in the sprayer cap, and more time doing other things, a less stressful job. So what if? What if 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗿𝗆 could be even more efficient? But at the same time, he could keep his rate consistent all the time and his spray quality consistent all the time. Well, I just happen to know a guy that can do it. And that is Symphony Steve. Now, Symphony Steve, he has a few extra tools in his tool belt. He has a 2020 in his sprayer cap, and he has SymphonyNozzle out on his booms. Now, SymphonyNozzle is an extremely fast pulsing nozzle that will change rate on a nozzle by nozzle basis. So now, as 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗿𝗆 takes a turn, each individual nozzle is going to compensate and change for that boom speed and keep rate consistent across the entire boom. What else does individual nozzle control get us? Well, it gives us the ability to spray through waterways. Now we have individual nozzle shutoff, and we can, with a boundary in the 2020, we can spray right through a waterway. And this is a huge time saver. It's also a stress reliever. We don't have to trace out our waterways. It makes a lot of fields easier. So that's one way 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗿𝗆 is faster, or Symphony Steve is faster than 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗿𝗆. But there's another way. See, 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗿𝗆, he can only change speeds from 8 to 14 mile an hour. And he moves his pressure from 30 to 80 psi. Symphony Steve, because the nozzles are compensating for rate, he can change speeds from 5 to 20 mile an hour with the same tips and at the same spray quality. So this wider speed range also makes him faster. Now, I received a picture of this field, and I'll be honest, I actually started laughing. But I know for sure that whoever sprays this field is not laughing. This is a really difficult field to spray. But now with SymphonyNozzle, we can spray through those waterways. And I'm excited for the ability that we can improve a guy's operation in a field like this on the sprayer he already owns. So what else does SymphonyNozzle individual nozzle control get us? Well, section valves are going to have overlap coming into the headlands. they're going to have to wait till the last nozzle crosses into coverage to shut off. Whereas SymphonyNozzle is going to shut off each individual nozzle and waste less product. So I have a little homework assignment for you. I think it's good if we know how much chemical waste we have with our section valves. So to do this and calculate it, you take your sprayed acres minus your planted acres, you divide that by your planted acres. You can do this on a few representative fields, or you can do this for the whole operation. This gives you your percent overlap. You take that, you times it by the total cost of the product that you're going to put through that sprayer. That includes fungicide, insecticide, fertilizer, cotton picks. Anything you put through that sprayer, you times it by your overlap, and that gives you your chemical waste. So you can take a picture of this slide and understand how much money am I throwing away by having section valves. And so we had a Symphony Steve last year that he put a 2020 in his Apache. And he put SymphonyNozzle on the boom. And we calculated how much less chemical he sprayed. And so he took the data before he had SymphonyNozzle and this past year's data and compared them, and he had 3% less overlap. And so I told him to give me the cost of all the product you're going to put through that spray. And so he obviously has some herbicide programs. He has some fungicide on beans. He actually has some nitrogen fertilizer on corn. And he gave me $187,000 for his operation. And that is $5,600 per year that he's saving in his back pocket. And that is even with 2024's lower chemical costs. And I really like when there's a hard return that we can calculate out. For this Symphony Steve, he's going to be able to pay for a Symphony system and the 2020 in around 5 years. But that's not it. See, now he can get rate consistency. He can get the consistent rate, the right rate on every acre. He can maintain his pressure, which means he can select a spray quality and stay there no matter what speed he is at. So I leave you with, who do you want to be like? Do you want to be like a 𝗬𝗂𝗏𝗏? That, compared to 𝗬𝗏𝗿𝗆𝗏𝗏, he has a lower rate variation. He has a lower spray quality variation, but he wastes product and he's slow and he spends a lot of time in the sprayer cab. Or do you want to be a 𝗬𝗏𝗿𝗆𝗏 who has the worst rate variation, the worst spray quality variation, still wastes product, but is 20% faster? Or do you want to be Symphony Steve, who can get consistent rate all the time, consistent spray quality all the time? He has the flexibility of, with the same nozzle, he can change his spray quality if he needs to have more drift or more coverage or less drift. He has nozzle by nozzle swath, saving him money, chemical costs into his back pocket, but also making him more efficient by spraying through waterways. And he's 26% faster when we timed him next to 𝗬𝗏𝗿𝗏𝗏 and 𝗬𝗂𝗏𝗏, because he has a wider speed range and he can spray through waterway. So I'm going to have Tristan come wrap up, and he's going to talk a little bit about what is in Symphony Steve's future.
Thanks, Aaron. You know, it is rare that a technology comes along that can do three things at once. It can help us do the job that we are already doing it better. It can help us do that same job faster, be more efficient. and save us money on inputs. Now that is a beautiful trifecta that does not come along with every technology. Not even every technology we develop at Precision Planting can hit all three of those things. But SymphonyNozzle can do all of that, which is why we are so excited about the potential that SymphonyNozzle has for your operation. You know, we've had Reclaim out for a year, and that has been super beneficial to growers. We just launched SymphonyNozzle this fall. But Aaron asked, you know, what else does Symphony Steve have in his future? You know, we believe that the sprayer has been historically underserved by the marketplace. It is the piece of equipment that you spend more time in compared to any other implement on the farm. And yet, it has been historically underserved by the marketplace, and we seek to change that. So, what are some of the other things that we're working on? You know, one of the biggest problems with spraying is that we have to take our herbicides and we have to spray them across 100% of our acres when really we only need it where the weeds are. And so the holy grail of spraying has always been the ability to target apply our herbicides only where they are needed. Now we have been testing camera technology that is able to identify crops, identify weeds, separate those apart from each other, and then target apply our herbicides only where the weeds are. You know, we've been researching this for a number of years and testing that combination of camera technology and SymphonyNozzle, and we look forward to launching this product commercially very soon. You know, the potential for this, for you to save inputs, to save chemical usage on your operation while doing the same job, if not a better job, at weed management shows great potential. And it's possible on the sprayer that you already have in the shed today. But you know, the question immediately comes when we start talking about target applying our herbicides. The question becomes, you know, Tristan, there are still products that I need to broadcast apply across 100% of my acres. So that might be our nitrogen program. That might be our residual herbicide program. I need to broadcast apply some chemistries to everywhere in my farm. And we cannot give up the efficiency of separating a target applied pass and a broadcast applied pass into two separate operations. It has to be done at the same time. And so, for the last year or so, we have been researching that ability, and we've been testing it. The ability to broadcast apply some chemistries and contact apply other chemistries, all within the sprayer pass, all within the same sprayer pass, and all on the sprayer that you already own. You know, we mentioned earlier the stress that goes into operating a sprayer. And one of the reasons that operating a sprayer is so stressful is especially comes to running it in a post-emergent pass. When we're trying to do all the things that an operator typically does, but also not run over our precious crop in the process. And so for the past couple years, we've been developing our Vision Row Guidance technology, using that same camera technology to identify crop rows and steer the sprayer through the field, greatly lowering operator fatigue and protecting the crop that is already established. When we have this camera technology that can distinguish between crops and weeds, our minds immediately go to, well, what other potential is there for you as a grower, for us? You know, and our minds go to things like crop stand, crop emergence, weed type, weed severity, crop health, disease. You know, the potential is enormous. And so we are excited about the scouting potential of our camera technology to give you a better view of your crop, of your weeds, of your disease across 100% of your acres, not just the place you were able to visit with boots on the ground. At the center of all these projects is a lot of data. And sometimes that data can be overwhelming. And so we are excited about the opportunity to present that data to you in the best in-cab control experience in the 2020 monitor, paired with the best data experience outside the cab in Panorama, bringing these two products together to present the right data at the right time in the right place to you as a grower. You know, Whenever I hear presentations like this, though, where there's a lot of new technology, my head kind of spins. And yours might be doing the same thing. When there's a lot of new technology, a lot of new opportunity, I have to think, what does this mean practically for me and my operation? So what it means is that the sprayer pass of the future is going to look a little different. And not of the far distant future, in the very short-term future. The sprayer pass of the future, it means the right mix in our booms when we need it. Whether that's the product tank getting out to the booms or the clean water tank, the right mix at the right time. It means better spray performance. It means maintaining our spray quality, maintaining rate, maintaining pressure across 100% of our acres, across all the speed ranges we need to operate in. It means a hard chemical input savings by target applying herbicides and using it only where we need it. It means a more comprehensive job scouting, getting a look at 100% of our acres, not just the places we're able to visit with our boots on the ground. It means a lower stress operator experience and the sprayer cab not being the least desirable place to be on the farm. And it means the right data at the right time in the right place. And it all starts with SymphonyNozzle today. We have had from the very beginning our mind on this future, and we have purposefully architected SymphonyNozzle to be the foundation that all these other technologies build upon. So I want to thank you all for being with us today. We really appreciate you taking the time to come to Winter Conference, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.